Hey guys, guess what? There's only 9 days to go now before we launch the Inside Track globally. I'm very excited. Thank you for being with me on this countdown journey where each day I'm going to be going into one of the chapters and really bringing out some of the lessons and wisdom that you can use today, right now, to make a difference in your life. Now, if you saw yesterday's video, then you'll know that we talked about the time where we walk away from helping someone versus the time we stay to help someone. And for some people, that's a really interesting timeline and a dichotomy and an argument that you have with yourself that can induce guilt and all of that stuff, because especially if it's somebody we care about, at what point do you give up on them, and at what point is it actually right to walk away and let them learn the lessons on their own? So if you haven't seen that video, please go and have a look at it. We also covered the incredible metaphysical topic of egregores, and how learning what egregores are and how they operate can give you some really good insights into collapsing the energy around conflict. And that's super powerful. Again, we talk a lot about that in chapter 2. And yesterday on the video, we also talked about sex energy transmutation, which, if there's one area to practice, that prison is definitely it. And so, I posted a link to one of Joe Dispenza's videos where he's answering that question to Oliver. And if you've not seen that video, it's probably because you're watching this on a different social feed. If you're watching this on YouTube or Instagram, please go to the event page on Facebook. That's where we're having the interaction. That's where we're answering the comments. That's where we're posting the bonus content. That's where you can get your free gifts in the description. So, please go there. If you need to redirect, it's very simple. petersage.com/VIP book launch, and go register as interested, and you'll be on the same page as us. So what are we doing today? Well, chapter 3 is called Behind the Door. And I really go into a deep dive into what it's like inside Britain's toughest jail. The violence, the food, the hygiene, the cell. And I really go through a lot of the hardship around that, because it can be very fearful being in a new environment, especially like that. And the challenge with fear, how do you transcend fear? Because fear is not your friend. People say, oh, well, fear is useful because it stops you walking down a dark alley at night. No, intelligence stops you walking down a dark alley at night. Fear is not your friend. And the reason is because when fear shows up, intelligence plummets. That's not just a euphemism, that's a biological fact, because what happens, blood is squeezed literally out of the frontal lobe and the prefrontal cortex and pushed towards the limbic brain. The limbic brain is where we work off reflex. And when that fight or flight response is triggered through fear, we tend to have 3 options. Do we run, do we stop and fight, or do we hide? But they all have the same physiological impact, that fight or flight. And the reason that the evolution does that to us is because if you are engaging critical thinking when you need to move quickly on reflex, you're likely going to get eaten back then, or probably hurt in a fight right now. What do I mean by that? Well, if you're analyzing somebody and you're putting information into the frontal cortex, oh, they're coming at me on a left side, probably going to throw too late, you're already hit. You need to work off reflex. You haven't got time for critical thinking. Mothers know this when it comes to protecting their young. They don't even think, they just go. So fear elicits a response from reflex, and it's usually why we make poor decisions intelligently when we're scared. But how do you transcend that? When you're walking through the wings and somebody approaches you with a knife and wants to steal your phone credit or has a menacing intent, how do you rise above being fearful so that you can retain a level of smart thinking and intelligently navigate that scenario before it gets to a place where you need to go off reflex if you're fighting? So, I cover that in chapter 3 as well. I also go into a lot throughout the book, uncovering the hidden patterns of human behavior and why we do what we do. If any of you have followed my work, for the last, however long, several years, you'll understand that this is my passion. It's really understanding why we do what we do unconsciously. Most people know what they do, they just don't do what they know. Why is that? Why do we self-sabotage? Why do we procrastinate? And so when it comes to violence, especially in Pentonville, the prison itself put out a questionnaire just after an attempted murder, which I narrowly missed, literally by minutes. My cellmate was actually involved and caught up in it. And the blood pouring out of the showers was just like a horror movie. It was like very traumatic. And we went straight onto lockdown. And the next day we had a a questionnaire pushed under our door asking us what we thought the issues of, that caused the violence was. And there was a multiple choice. Was it gang issues? Was it drugs? All of these stuff. Now, I wrote quite a lengthy letter to the governor explaining my thoughts around why there was violence. And it had nothing to do with the initial thoughts that most people would attribute to it. And I also offered a solution. But I'll give you an example. What I mean by the hidden patterns, if you uncover the layer of the onion. In my private coaching, where I work with high-level CEOs, usually, or people that have gone through certain levels of trauma, especially working with business owners, if somebody approaches me and says, listen, I need to learn better time management because I'm running my company at 100+ hours a week, I'm stressed out of my mind, I just can't manage my time effectively. And they think they need time management. Now, if you go to a normal business coach, they'll probably teach you better time management skills. But I'm not interested in that. They're the symptoms, not the cause. And you can get a painkiller, which is treating the symptoms, or you can address the underlying reason why it's there. And in several scenarios, people that have, in this case where people have come to me for time management, we find out that the real issue is nothing to do with time management. A classic case would be a fear of being able to handle rejection. And what does that mean? How does that translate? Well, if you're scared of being rejected, then you don't want to say no to people, because if you say no to somebody's request, then you feel that they will reject you. And if you've got a pattern running along those lines, then you're going to avoid that, or you're going to find it hard to establish boundaries. So therefore, you're going to say yes to too many things, therefore your schedule's going to fill up, and therefore you think you're under the illusion of needing time management in order to solve it. No. Start working on being able to create boundaries, eliminate the fear of rejection, get to a point where you're not driven by the good opinion of others, you're coming from a moral sense of guidance that's independent of that, and you achieve social freedom. Right? And again, talk about social freedom. Most people, if you're watching this on Facebook, then that's a classic example of a medium that has really engineered an epidemic of inauthenticity. If you doubt that, then check it out for yourself. Is Facebook, on what you post on your Facebook, is that the life you actually have? Or is it more the life you want to engineer other people to think you have? Answer you for yourself. And for most people, if they're honest, most of their posts are put there because that's the persona they want to show to the world as to the illusion of the life that they think they have. Now, I'm telling you, the most important like that you want to get on your post is the one that you put on before you press post. After that, nothing else matters. But if you keep checking your feeds and see, oh, how many people have liked it now, that is a symptom that you are hooked into a place of being inauthentic. Now, and it's a human condition, especially in today's world. It's part of that condition that generates the ego. And it was my ego that landed me in prison. And I talk about this in chapter 3. I talk about the fact that when I got guilty of contempt, it was because I had this indignation about what I thought the other side were doing, and I was there to prove me right and them wrong. That was the wrong approach. I got caught up in an ego trap and I didn't even see it coming. My own fault. But I needed to learn. And so being real is a process of evolution and lowering ego and not caring about what other people think, or having to prove that you're right by making somebody else wrong so you can feel good about it. That's a whole different pattern. So I also talk about the times I cry and the reasons why. Because I want to be real. This was a real place. This was not a place where we had cameras and second takes and I can get on stage like I normally do and address thousands of people. No, this was raw, it was real, it was dangerous, it was violent, it was repressive, it was fear-based. The environment inside Pentonville was one of the most negative I've ever faced, and certainly the most concentrated in terms of negativity. So I talk about how I cope with that. I talk about how I deal with being able to use the tools that I have to be able to cope with that. And one of the tools obviously is meditation. So in the syllabus section in chapter 3, I talk about meditation because it's got very much of a cool topic these days. A lot of celebrities are now talking about it, so it's getting interest. But it's also a topic that many people struggle with. And I go into detail in what I call the two types of meditation that I use. One is called passive meditation, the other is active. And in chapter 3, I talk about passive meditation. Passive meditation is where you quieten down all of the sensory data and input, all of the data that's coming into your awareness. Now, the physical data is one aspect of that. Yeah, and that's easy. You go to a quiet place, you close your eyes, you have a little space in where you try to meditate. But the challenge is that the two data streams you want to be reducing, one is physical, the other is clearly mental. And that's where a lot of people struggle. Now, the reason for that is because if you lower the physical data input, it tends to amplify the mental data input. We see this in intimate situations. Yeah, if you're with a lover and they become blindfolded, or whatever your fantasy or kink is, then why do we blindfold people in bed? Yeah? Or why is that something that's popular? Why? Because if you take away the visual sense, it amplifies the other senses, which can be quite exciting in some context intimately. But take that into meditation. If you quiet the physical sense, because you've got a quiet place, you're wearing headphones with on music, or you've got a candle and that's the only thing you're gazing at, or your eyes are closed, what does that do? It quietens the physical senses, which then amplifies the mental noise, and the mind starts chattering up, and people can't quiet that, so they can't meditate, or they struggle to meditate. How do you quiet the mind? Well, in chapter 3, I give what is my most effective way of lowering the mental chatter as well as the physical chatter, and one way that you can actually transcend that. So I talk about it. I was so excited because when I walked into the jail cell for the first night, and they took me to my first night cell, I walked in and I had a huge smile on my face, and the guy says, what's up? I says, oh wow, I can't believe it. They've given me my own meditation room with a toilet. How epic. Right? And I was generally excited because now I get to meditate for many more hours a day than I normally would in the craziness of being outside of jail. But if you don't know how to meditate, or you're not comfortable with your own company because you're still being ran by patterns of the good opinion of others, or fear of rejection, or all of the other stuff that is under the illusion that you're not enough, then meditation can be a breeding ground for doubt, fear, anxiety, because quiet the physical senses, the mind starts perking up. Anyway, that's what I wanted to share with you on this video. Hope that was useful. We're going to go into tomorrow on day 4, or chapter 4, which means there's going to be only 8 days to go before launch. And tomorrow I'm going to be going into understanding the distinction between freedom and liberty. And that was a massive distinction that I was teaching the prisoners inside that had a transformative effect for many of them. I'm also going to get on to the other topic, which is the active meditation. Now guys, please listen to me. Active meditation is sexy. It is where we really get to a point where we can start to influence probability in the outside world. Now that's universally known in personal growth as manifesting, or the law of attraction. And the challenge is, if you have a Newtonian physics mindset, that's impossible. And it's poo-pooed a lot by the people that are addicted to that belief system. If you're in the metaphysical, esoteric sort of camp, you tend to over-amplify the ability to manifest by making it more than what it is. So I'm going to break down tomorrow for you on video the distinctions. The first time I'll have shared it in this way, a distinction on how to understand that and make sense of it, so that the science stacks up, the esoteric side stacks up, and you can go and practice this and get actual results to verify for yourself. So that's what we're going to be doing tomorrow. Thank you for being on this journey. Remember, if you're with me till the end, on August the 1st, we've launched the book. If you buy the book on August the 1st, we're going to give you the electronic book and the audio book free of charge. Also, probably a load of other goodies I might be tempted to give you as well, because I just want to add some value. If you don't buy the book, no big deal. Thank you so much for just being on this journey and taking in this information. Please not only use it to help yourself, but also to help others as well. And my goal throughout this countdown is really to deliver value, not only that's in the book, but something that you can actually use now, even if you don't buy it. So on that note, I love you. Thank you so much. I will see you tomorrow when we start talking about and drill down some of the lessons in chapter 4.